Hello, Grant Swain at Gearhead School. In this video, we're going to take a look at some basic terminology. We'll first look at the left side, right side of a car as illustrated in the image here. It seems simple enough, but it actually causes a lot of problems in the industry because the left side is sitting in the driver's seat looking out the window. That's the left side and the right side. But a lot of times the parts store would ask you, you need a mirror, you want left side, right side. And a lot of people they just kind of get all twisted around. They think, well, I'm looking at the car from the front of the car. They would get the left and right side wrong because they would use the right frame of reference of sitting in the car looking at the windshield. So most of the retail parts manuals, or people in retail parts, will ask you driver's side, passenger side, so there's no confusion. The reason I bring this up, if you're working using OEM manuals like a Honda, Toyota, Chevy manuals, or even a parts system, they refer to L and R as left and right. So just remember, the pro level is left side, right side, not driver side, passenger side. So, you're around a bunch of pros, use left and right, and then you'll look like you know what you're talking about too. So now let's look at directions. If you got something going a long ways on the car, front to back, it's called longitudinal. And we'll look at some applications of that at the end of this video. So if we got direction going across the car, it's called transverse, like I transverse a valley from one side to the other, a transverse. So crossways on the car is transverse direction. And here again, we'll give you some examples of that. Let's see how this conversation, when we talk about this rear suspension. Now, if you notice, this has A as a painted rod. That's a rod that fixes to the rear suspension along the link back to the frame. So this is going to take care of transverse forces, right? When I'm going lefts and rights and lefts and rights, and this mass of the car is trying to keep going straight, and we'll have a lot of cross transverse forces. So if I'm driving the car and I'm going left and right and I'm hearing clunk, 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 my mind, I'm thinking a transverse type force. So when I look at the bottom of the car, I'm like a transverse type control, which is A, the painted rod. And I can use this terminology on the telephone. I'm telling somebody at the alignment shop, I just sent that car to you. On the way down, I heard some clunking going through some turns. Have you got to double check, see if there's some kind of transverse control loose, right? Good application, right? A longitudinal force is going to be something long ways with the car. So if I'm driving a car, accelerating, I hear clunk, you hit the brakes, here clunk, that's a longitudinal force, right? Because the tires are gripping the ground, and I'm accelerating and decelerating, and the car inertia is trying to go forward and back. So that's putting a longitudinal stress on the suspension system. Quick question, which one is the strongest force, accelerating or decelerating? It's decelerating. Your brakes have more negative horsepower than your car has horsepower. There actually used to be a test called a stall test. They don't let you do it anymore. It's not published anymore. There'd be a number that if you took an automatic transmission, a car parked, brakes firmly applied, put it in drive, and put your foot to the floor, the car wouldn't go. The engine would rev up in a certain degree and a lot of stress and a lot of drama, but there'd be a number. The engine RPM, that's called a stall RPM. Most manufacturers drop that. You can damage a car if you get a little too carried away there and do it too long. So, moral of the story is, if a car stopped, brakes are applied, every production car that I'm aware of has a more powerful brake system than more negative horsepower than the engine. Now, don't try this once you get going, because there's a difference between static coefficient of friction and dynamic coefficient of friction. So that's another lesson in my course. So point is, you hear noises accelerating, braking, you got to recognize that's a longitudinal force. In this case, this car where you have long trailing rods, on each side B is hooked to the frame, comes back and locates the axle front to rear. That's going to be your main longitudinal control. So you should be able to, once you understand suspension systems, look under a car and quickly pick out what are the major longitudinal controls and transverse controls, and more importantly, know when to look at what when you hear certain noises in certain conditions. Then we look at car types. There's about 8 or 10 categories. Sometimes you have cars that don't exactly fall into one type that kind of blur the lines, but we're looking at like a sedan with 4 doors, a coupe with 2 doors, hatchback with a door in the back, convertible, top comes down, station wagon, pickup truck, minivan, and SUVs. These all kind of are the types of cars, the form factors is a fancy word there. When I say SUV, you have in your mind, you already kind of know the shape of the car, the function of the car as used, and you say convertible, coupe. So these are the car types, and here again, try to use these as much as you can instead of saying, it's the car, with the hatch in the back, and just use the major car types. Here again, it helps make you look like you're part of the industry as a professional. And we'll wrap up this lesson with a discussion of pillars. The pillars are the posts that hold the top of the car onto the rest of the body, as shown in the image. Starts off with A at the front and walks through the alphabet to the back. Each pillar gets the next letter of the alphabet. There's always a caveat. First one is a four-door sedan. A pillar right by the front windshield, the B pillar between the front and back door, and the C pillar. Easy peasy. Throwing a station wagon, we got A, B, C, then D pillar in the very back. The only exception to the rule is that the back can never be less than C. You may have a coupe like shown. This actually, if you were to roll the front window down and roll the back window down, there'd be no post between the front and back. That still gives you a C pillar at the back. The B pillar is implied, even though it's not there. So that's the only caveat. So there is no such thing as the back. The back is always C, right? Even if there's no B. Other than that, A, B, C, D right on the back. So that wraps up this video. And this is just part of one lesson, which is 70 full lessons in our Essentials course. If you got plenty of information about that, if you got any more questions, reach out to me. I'd be glad to talk to you about it. Catch you on the next video.